We've all heard that saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. But is it ever really that simple? Today, we're going to dive into something way more complex. This real paradox at the heart of trauma and personal growth. We're going to explore how you can have profound strength and deep damage coexisting often at the very same time.
So let's just start with the big question right up front. Can real, profound growth come directly from a traumatic experience? Now, most of us, our gut reaction is to jump to a simple yes or a hard no. You either think about resilience and strength, or you think about lasting harm. But what the clinical research is showing us is that the reality, it's just so much more nuanced than that.
And this, right here, is the core paradox we're digging into. Post-traumatic growth and unresolved trauma, they're not a sequence, where one happens and then the other. In so many cases, especially after someone's been through long-term adversity, they're happening together, in parallel, at the same time. Okay, so let's break this down. Let's really look at this idea of two completely different realities living inside a single experience. This is what's known as dual outcomes, and it's a key framework for understanding how people respond to really prolonged hardship.
Think of it like this. You have a single high-pressure environment. On one hand, that pressure can forge absolutely incredible strength, resilience, and adaptability. But on the other hand, that exact same environment, that exact same pressure can inflict deep, lasting, unresolved trauma. Both of those things are true. They're both real outcomes of the very same experience.
So let's look at the positive side first, the resilience. In these restrictive systems, people often develop this powerful sense of collective strength. They form these incredibly tight bonds, right? And they come up with these ingenious strategies just to navigate their world. In a strange way, the pressure itself actually makes the group more cohesive and, in some ways, more capable. But here's the other side of that coin. At the exact same time those strengths are being built, fear-based behaviors are also piling up. People start relying on coping mechanisms that are purely about survival, nothing more. And the real problem is that this chronic stress has lasting impacts. It can make it unbelievably difficult to function once you're no longer inside that system. And this brings us to a really crucial point. This whole dynamic, this high-pressure situation, it doesn't just affect our behaviors. It actually fundamentally shapes our very identity, who we believe we are. There's a clinical term for this. It's called systemic adaptation. So what does that actually mean? Well, it's the process where you basically change your own structure to survive. It could be in a dysfunctional family, a high-control workplace, really any system that demands you limit your own freedom, your own autonomy, just to get by. Your identity starts to kind of merge with what the system needs from you. So here's the kicker, and it's a bit of a surprising idea. A strong, shared identity is often created because of the adversity, not just in spite of it. That constant external pressure, it's like a furnace. It forces people together, and it speeds up the creation of shared meaning, shared roles, and this really powerful sense of us against the world. The source material gives us this really powerful way to think about it. Imagine it starts with a small group, maybe a family, facing this constant stress. Well, to survive, that group has to create shared roles and find a common purpose. And over time, under that relentless pressure, it gets forged into this cohesive unit with a strong, unified identity. So, what happens when you finally leave that environment? This is where a really critical internal conflict comes into play. This battle between the survival self that got you through it all and the true self that just wants to live and thrive now. And we have to start by validating that survival self. I mean, the roles you had to take on, the ways you learned to cope, that hypervigilance, the rigid rules you lived by, all of those things were absolutely essential. They were powerful, adaptive tools that literally helped you survive what might have felt like an impossible situation. But here's the turn. Those exact same survival tools, the very things that saved your life back then, can become huge obstacles in the present. They can hold you back from health, from real, authentic relationships, from a life where you're actually thriving, not just surviving. You can really see the contrast when you put them side by side like this. The survival self, it often works with boundaries that are either like a brick wall or totally non-existent, whatever you had to do to get by. Decisions are all based on fear and staying safe. In relationships, they can be about utility, about what role someone plays in your survival. Now, compare that to the true self, which can learn to have flexible, healthy boundaries. Decisions start to come from a place of your own values and desires. And relationships,
They get to be built on real connection and authenticity.
All right, so that brings us to the path forward. How do you heal beyond just surviving? The goal here is to move toward what clinicians call differentiation and wholeness. And the key concept is something called identity differentiation. Now, this is so important. It's not about erasing your past, not at all. It's really the essential work of carefully separating who you truly are, your authentic self, from all those roles and behaviors you had to adopt simply to make it through. So, a healthy approach to healing has to be balanced. First, you have to validate the incredible resilience and the skills you gained. You have to honor the survivor in you. But you also have to acknowledge the real harm that the environment caused. Then, the work is about deconstructing those survival tactics that just aren't serving you anymore. And, this is crucial, restoring the personal boundaries and the sense of self that got lost along the way. I want to pause on this quote because it is just so important. Growth in adversity does not obligate continued exposure. Let that sink in. What this means is just because you got stronger or more resilient or more capable inside of a toxic system, that does not mean the system was good for you. Your growth doesn't justify the harm, and it certainly doesn't mean you owe it to anyone to stay there. And so, we'll leave you with this. This is the question that really sits at the heart of this entire process of healing. It's not about forgetting what you've been through. It's about discovering the person who exists beyond the roles, beyond the armor, beyond the fight. So the question is, who are you, really, beyond what you had to be just to survive?